Let me say thank you to those who have sponsored Sound Off, whose ads you'll see running throughout the presentation. As you know, this program was scheduled for last March. That obviously didn't happen. And while we can't be in person just yet, we decided to host the second virtual event, which we hope will lead up to an in-person event at resorts in mid-2021. Many of our guests are signing on, but I'd like to give a shout out to my colleagues. I think they're on, and they're always a big help to the Development Council. Lauren Moore, Atlantic County Economic Development Alliance. Christy Howe, Burlington County Chamber of Commerce. Vicki Clark, Cape May County Chamber of Commerce. Roy Cantor, New Jersey Business and Industry. Mike Egerton, New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, folks. Always good to partner with you. This morning, we're very pleased to have with us at this webinar special guest, Governor Phil Murphy's Chief of Staff, George Helmy. And I am the president of the Southern New Jersey Development Council. And let me just first wish you the very best. Hope that you and your work family are safe and healthy. We here at the council, which is a nonprofit government affairs organization, established nearly 70 years ago. We'll be celebrating next year our 70th anniversary. Continue to work on behalf of our members and the business community in the southern 8 counties by providing timely access to information on resources, initiatives, and regulatory policy that impacts the business community. And that includes today's webinar with George, where we'll hear more about infrastructure spending, the long-awaited Economic Development Incentives Bill, which just this past week reached an agreement between the governor, the Senate president, and the Assembly Speaker. And also we'll hear more about the CARES Act spending that has helped the business community, among other topics. After George's remarks, we'll be joined in a roundtable discussion with sponsors of today's meeting. And just let me run through today's roundtable participants, starting with Susan Cohn, Regional Vice President of Atlantic City Electric. For over 18 years, Susan has worked in a variety of departments at Atlantic City Electric, helping meet the company's mission to support the importance of sustainability, energy efficiency, and volunteerism. Susan is also a member of our board and serves as a co-chair to our Energy and Environment Committee. Joe Divis has been with AT&T for over 25 years and was recently appointed interim president of AT&T New Jersey. John Robinson is the president of the Carpenters Local 255 and serves as senior council representative of the Eastern States Regional Council of Carpenters. Tony Bowitterman leads Comcast NBC's legislative efforts here in New Jersey. Also joining us, an Atlantic City gaming executive who needs no introduction with more than 35 years of casino industry expertise is Mark Giantonio, the president and CEO of Resorts. Followed by Dave Mayer, who is the Director of Governmental Affairs and Business Development for New Jersey American Water, also serves as the mayor of Gloucester Township, and he previously served in the State Assembly from 2004 to 2008. And just as a reminder, following George's remarks, Andrew McNally, the Director of Governmental Affairs at South Jersey Industries, will start this roundtable discussion. After the roundtable, we plan to have approximately 10 to 15 minutes remaining for audience questions and answers, and I ask that you use your Zoom Q&A feature to ask those questions. We're also recording today's webinar and we'll send a link to all that are interested. I'd like to turn the program over now to presenting sponsor, Melissa Orson. Melissa is Senior Vice President at South Jersey Industries and President and Chief Operation Officer at South Jersey Gas. In her role, Melissa is responsible for the day-to-day leadership and strategic oversight at South Jersey Gas with a focus on driving operational excellence. Previously, she served as the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, where she directed more than $1 billion in economic development across activities across the state. Melissa is a graduate of the University of Delaware and Widener University Delaware Law School. Welcome, Melissa, and thank you for your continued support of the Development Council and of this program, Sound Off for South Jersey.
Thank you, Marlene, and I'm delighted to be here this morning, and I look forward to the next time that we can do this in person, certainly. Although that's a good segue. 2020 has been such an unusual year, but what has been remarkable is our ability, our collective ability to continue to work and keep things on track with all the technology. I know from a South Jersey Gas, SJI perspective, our number one goal was safety of our employees, customers, and then keeping our construction and our schedules on track so that all of those whom we employ, including all the contractors, we don't lose sight and we continue to provide the services. Just in this year alone, virtually, we've hired approximately 200 people, a percentage of which is in that construction space. And we've done everything remotely, be it recruiting, interviewing, onboard modeling. We've changed the way we operate for the most part while continuing to meet the excellence that we demand. Working with George, that I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing, and the governor's office, we've very much appreciated the relationship that we share and their recognition how the utilities support the economy. So for that, we are incredibly grateful to you, George, and the relationship that we have with you. You mentioned my government background, and it was a seamless transition with George coming in to the governor's office and always willing to listen and to provide that partnership. So we are grateful for that, and we thank you. We also appreciate the role that we serve on Governor Murphy's Restart and Recovery Commission. And we always commit to being a partner across the board. So thank you for that. So I have the pleasure of introducing George. He currently serves, as you know, as Chief of Staff. He's a native of Jersey City and previously served as State Director to Senator Cory Booker. He spent 3 years serving on the Senator's senior staff and overseeing the day-to-day operations of his New Jersey offices, which I'm sure was no easy task. Prior to serving in Senator Booker's office, he worked in the private sector for 2 Fortune 100 companies and served as an aide to the late Senator Frank Glenn. George currently resides in Morris County with his wife and 2 children and received his bachelor's from Rutgers. So thank you, George, and I hope we continue to have the relationship that we
do. Great, thank you. Melissa, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Marlene, and thank you all. As many good friends, I was able to go through the list earlier, and a lot of folks who've known me for a very long time and have been a part of my life for a long time. And so thank you for taking the time this morning, and again, good morning to everyone, and appreciate the invitation to be with you. As I apologized to the leadership team earlier, my background will change a few times. We are in the storm center off the Parkway dealing with the storm response, which can actually be an interesting metaphor for my time as Chief of Staff, but definitely a metaphor for this year. So there'll be a bunch of folks back and forth, unfortunately, and maybe some noise in the background. So I do apologize for that. I think just prudent for us to start just where we are as a state. We're really sort of in the heart of our second wave in terms of our projections. The metrics that we watch minute by minute continue to trend in the wrong direction. I haven't seen today's numbers, but we're somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 cases per day. Hospitalizations continue to rise. The number of our neighbors who need a critical care bed and need a ventilator, and unfortunately the number of our loved ones who are passing due to the virus continue to trend in the wrong direction. course, the difference, right, between where we were in wave one and where we are now is we're just much better prepared. The state has been diligent in its preparation for our modeled second wave. And so unlike our first wave, we are testing 50,000 people plus every single day in New Jersey. We have all the PPE in stockpile. We have the PPE at our long-term care centers. We have the personal protective equipment at our hospitals. We have the hospital capacity that we've built out. We aren't seeing significant staff shortages just yet. So, you know, those are the bright spots in what has been a challenging year, as Melissa said, for all of us, but specifically for our healthcare networks and our healthcare providers and our healthcare workers. At the same time, we're dealing with the second wave. We're dealing with a logistics and distribution challenge that no state has undertaken, probably I would say in history on its own, and that's the vaccination effort. And while that's an incredible bright light and finally some hope, and again, what has been a rather dark year, it's an incredible supply chain challenge and an even greater burden again on our county OEMs, our county local health offices, our healthcare providers, and obviously continues to strain both the personnel resources of the state and its finances. And then, you know, of course, start of our winter snow season, and we got walloped. Probably Trenton North got walloped. I know most of the state saw snow, and folks are dealing with ice on the roads and heavy rains and winds. I know there's, you know, issues in the state, even though, again, knock on wood, and thanks to many of our utility partners who are on this call, we really dodged a bullet in terms of mass outages. And again, that's in no small part to pre-positioned staff and resources by our utilities. And look, while we continue to fight the pandemic, you know, we've put in place the safeguards that allow us to slowly reopen and bring people back to work. And, you know, just facts here, like while we've seen state after state, metropolitan area after metropolitan area go backwards, you know, the governor has continued to say we're going to open based on the data. We did. We opened very cautiously. We opened with a certain discipline. We're one of the few states that have not had to significantly roll back our business openings. We think most of our providers are doing it the right way. They're taking incredible precautions, not only for their staff, but for their patrons. And we're sort of, again, like, we're taking the heavy artillery right now, but we want to maintain our open posture. We want to keep these restaurants, these small businesses, these gyms open to the extent we can. Where there are bad actors, we're trying to use a scalpel approach and go after those folks. But again, I think the opening methodology has worked. We've been able to stay open. I would bet it's not the opening posture that many want, but it's working. And unlike other states, we haven't had to go backwards yet. And, you know, many of you sort of know these announcements, and I think Jane sort of mentioned a little bit about our CARES funding. We've put a ton of that allocation, which I would just say was, you know, just a down payment on the need, that 2.4 very heavily restricted CARES dollars. We've put a lot of that into the street to help, you know, businesses, Main Street businesses, renters, landlords. You know, the DCA and the EDA put out roughly 150 million in business assistance onto Main Street. The EDA has helped over 20,000 of our small businesses. We announced another 100 million in CRF money for economic revitalization. 70 million more went to, I think, the Small Business Emergency Development Grant or Emergency Assistance Grant. With the help of the Speaker Coughlin and Senate President Sweeney, we put $35 million into the food industry. We put more money into food security, not only through the budget that we passed in September, but directly through the CRF money. We put 15 million to our micro businesses, 10 million through PPE access. The incentives bill, which I'll speak to a little bit, will hopefully put more money into making PPE in the state of New Jersey. We've invested tens of millions into rental assistance, both for tenants, homeowners, and landlords. DHS has put hundreds of millions of dollars into rental assistance and childcare. And, you know, most recently, we announced another 60 million directly to local governments who needed help in maintaining, you know, their test, trace, isolate postures. So, you know, we're putting as much of that money into the street, and obviously the current federal deadline, not knowing exactly what happens in Congress by Friday, the current federal deadline is to expend all of those funds by the end of this calendar year. And now on to real projects that create, not that that money I just referenced doesn't create real jobs or sustain real jobs, but, you know, we're continuing to look forward, as what was mentioned by Melissa. You know, I come from the private sector world, and we're always looking at things of how do we not only maintain our posture, but grow in sectors where New Jersey should be outperforming its competitors. And in one of those areas, we've just had a tremendous partnership with the Senate president, and that's in wind energy. And in June, the governor announced plans to build the nation's first purpose-built marshaling and manufacturing port dedicated to the offshore wind industry, and what I used to call Hope Creek. It's Lower Alloways Creek in Salem County. That port is one way that will position us for economic growth as we come out of this pandemic, looking for new industries that are, just on the cusp of breaking out, that will create really good paying jobs for New Jerseyans. And, as we know, that area of New Jersey can use that kind of investment, can use that revitalization in an industry that, yet is unborn. And, that exciting partnership, and I could be off on the numbers here, but, that's an investment of $300 million plus in infrastructure and in the future of, true green economy jobs. And for us, as the governor continues to say, when we think of wind energy, it's without question taking us off of less efficient sources of energy and moving to greener and renewable energy sources. But it's also where the jobs are going. And we want to be first, both in the environmental and clean energy component of that. But make no mistake, for us, this is like, we're cold-blooded about this stuff. Like, we want the jobs. I don't only want the offshore jobs, I want the wind energy, but I want to make the stuff in New Jersey. I want to produce it in New Jersey. I want our guys building the infrastructure to build the stuff in New Jersey. And I want to supply the rest of the East Coast with that. And that's the governor's vision. It's about the massive goal of 7,500 megawatts by 2035 and 100% clean energy by 2050. But make no mistake, this is about a multi-billion-dollar industry that is in its early stages, and we're in competition with Virginia and New York, and we are trying to get ahead of the game in creating that industry in New Jersey, and specifically in South Jersey. And again, as I said, we've worked very closely with the Senate President, the Speaker of the Assembly, Chairman Berzicelli, on this. We have another announcement forthcoming in a few weeks in Paulsboro, with partners EEW and Orsted, that will again be hundreds of millions of dollars in investment and create thousands of good paying jobs for our brothers and sisters in New Jersey. And again, I can't stress this strongly enough. We really feel we're on the cusp of a multi-billion-dollar industry that will employ tens of thousands of New Jerseyans over the year. And so, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, Atlantic City and our continued investment in Atlantic City. And there's a lot to be done as the casinos emerge from the economic pain that the pandemic has caused. And through CREDA, we've continued to invest in hard infrastructure, in public safety, and as folks have seen recently, even more new projects and economic development opportunities throughout AC. There's a lot of work to be done there, but AC is truly positioned for revival. And the Murphy administration throughout its second term is going to continue the focus through the leadership of the Lieutenant Governor on Atlantic City. Last thing I'll mention before I spend just 2 minutes, if you'll allow me, on the incentives package is we're about to embark on maybe the largest multi-year infrastructure investment program the state has ever seen, and is clearly sorely needed. And this is great for whether you're a big business or whether you're the laborers or the carpenters or the operating engineers. This is a massive investment, not only in our roads and bridges, but our air and seaports, all the way to the Portal Bridge and the Gateway Project. This is the revitalization of the Walter Rand Station in Camden, all the way to the revitalization of Penn Station in Newark, and sorely needed investment to attract new business, but also put our men and women in organized labor to work. And we have a saying around here that we intend to leave many components of New Jersey wholly different than we inherited them after the governor's second term. And frankly, it's not lost on anybody that there's many times with the Speaker of the Assembly and the Senate President and the governor disagree. Rational minds disagree regularly, and those guys have different positions on different issues. But when it comes to economic revitalization, when it comes to creating jobs, when it comes to how we think about how we come out of the pandemic from an economic perspective, these guys are spending a lot of time together, a lot of time thinking about how to do that. And it's not geographic, it's not in any way parochial interests. It's really how to get the whole state back up and working. And I think, you're seeing a lot of that creativity and a lot of that real energy and a lot of things getting done, whether it's Atlantic City, whether it's the wind ports and the marshaling and manufacturing I just mentioned, and the hard infrastructure investments. Again, that's a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar investment that New Jersey has not seen. And we know from the statistics, from my Lautenberg days, you had to know your ROI on infrastructure if you were going to work for Senator Lautenberg, whether you were answering your phones or you were his state director. ROI on infrastructure investment in New Jersey or the New York metropolitan region is 7-1. And we intend to take advantage of that ROI. Spend a few minutes, and clearly I timed so that you would embrace me. I timed the announcement on the incentives deal for the day I would be talking to you. And again, thank you very much for having me. But we're really proud of the bill we're putting forward. It's investing in the right type of job creation. It has the Emerge program, the Aspire program. It's got angel investor tax credits. It's focused on community benefit. It's focused on continuing our growth in the film industry, whether that's bringing more film and series production to New Jersey or really incentivizing more studio development in New Jersey. It's got the offshore wind incentives in there. It's got, the things that we just need: historic tax credits, brownfield tax credits, to incentivize investment in vertical development in those areas. And then it's got the things that the governor has thought are important to any incentives plan that he's been looking for over 2 years, and in partnership, and I use that word very purposefully, in partnership with our colleagues, my colleagues and my friends, Skip and Kevin in the Assembly and Senate respectively, and more importantly, the Speaker and the Senate President. We've put forward a really robust plan that includes program caps, project caps, and a hard overall cap. We've put compliance measures in the bill. We've put an inspector general in the bill. We've put worker protections for our brothers and sisters in the building trades when they're developing these projects, and our brothers and sisters in organized labor, whether it be UFCW or SEIU, who are doing the work on the inside of these buildings. And it's something we're proud of. It took us a long time to get here. I don't think that we can wait. This has small, medium, and long-term economic recovery built into it. And that's one of the reasons after 2 years, it's really time to get this done. We're starting, as I'll wrap up, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel as it relates to the pandemic, with the incredible work of American science with the vaccine. And we just need to be better prepared than we have in previous recessions to come out of the economic slump on this, because we know there's so many challenges that we will face as we come out of the health impacts of COVID. And that'll include the economic recovery. It'll include our mental health, the mental health of your employees, the mental health of our children, the learning loss of our children. And so it's really going to be, I think this is my personal opinion, I think the mental health and the economic health impacts of COVID are going to far outlive what we consider the public health impacts of COVID. And, I'm proud that the groundwork that we have laid together with the Speaker and the Senate President have put us in a place where I think we'll be stronger and ready to recover quicker than some of our competitor states. So with that, I will shut up. I warned people that my remarks were just sort of bullet points, but I used to work for Senator Booker, and if you don't learn the art of the filibuster after 5 years with Corey, you've missed the note. So with that, Jane, maybe I'll hand, or Marlene, I'll hand back to you.
Hey, George, this is Andrew McNally. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at SJI. I'm going to be kicking off our panel discussion, and I just wanted to say thank you for your remarks today. We certainly recognize the impact your office and your team has had on overseeing the policies and priorities that can affect the business outlook in the state and the overall economic outlook. And we certainly appreciate the transparent and honest approach and your time this morning. So right now, we're going to include our sponsor roundtable participants in the discussion who are joining us on screen. As a reminder, we will also have the opportunity for the audience to ask questions. We've received a few in advance, and we ask that you please use the Q&A feature in the chat to submit your question. We'll look to get to as many as we can. So with that, while the other panelists are coming on, I'd like to begin the discussion by asking my question, George. And so here goes. Following the financial crisis in 2008, the state relied on the utilities by encouraging infrastructure programs, putting people to work, and providing the state with much needed economic stimulus. Given the current economic challenges flowing from the pandemic, do you see the state following a similar path regarding the utilities and infrastructure and economic stimulus?
Andrew, thank you for that, and thank you for the kind words on the earlier notes. Look, I would first start by saying I think the utilities have been tremendous partners in a number of fronts. One is sort of Governor Murphy's movement as it relates to our energy portfolio. Been incredible and willing partners in working together to get there. I think we all see that vision. Two is no doubt about it, the utilities have been tremendous partners in helping homeowners who can't pay the bill and keeping the heat on. And that's not lost on anybody in the administration, and I don't think lost on anybody in Trenton. The efforts that folks are putting forward in keeping people's lights and heat on. So again, just tremendous gratitude for that. The answer to your question is simply yes. And we've been doing a lot of work through Joe Fiordaliso, president of the BPU, to gear up. That's again, that's infrastructure ROI. That's 7-to-1 for us in terms of benefit to cost. And we're working closely with the utilities on that front, both in terms of just sort of regular infrastructure upgrades or enhancements, while at the same time looking at our new focus, or our better defined focus, on energy efficiency and resiliency. So short answer is without question, it's part of that big energy investment and that infrastructure investment I mentioned. And we want to tackle it from two fronts.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. Joe Divis, I think you're next up.
Good morning, everyone, and George, thanks again for being here on a day that you've got. You're probably juggling a lot of things, so we appreciate you taking time to be with us. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced the world to change rapidly, ways we live and work, and obviously with a premium on connectivity, whether it be for commerce, telemedicine, education, and really on days like this, public safety. How does the Murphy administration view the roles of the state and the private sector in continuing those infrastructure investments, which by and large are private capital, that are so critical to robust wireless connectivity, which New Jersey is increasingly dependent upon?
Yeah, Joe, I think that's a great question, and thank you for joining today. I know how busy you are at all times, but also on days like this. So look, I think my prior work on broadband connectivity in the United States Senate, this is an issue that requires a significant amount of federal investment, a significant amount of state investment, and a significant amount of private investment. And I don't think it's ever been made clearer about sort of the need for expanded connectivity now that more kids and more parents, frankly, and more people generally are doing a lot of their work online. But as we struggled immensely back in March when all the schools were going remote, to provide our youth and our children with the connectivity they need to STEM to learn, and to STEM learning loss. And I think there's a number of pieces of legislation that have been mulled around for a while to help on that front. But I think it's going to be something that requires really a significant conversation, but it can't be done just by the state alone. And so my answer to you is, there's a definite need. I don't have a crisp answer on what the path forward is. I know your company and others are doing a tremendous amount of work on bringing sort of the next generation of technology and mobile technology online. And the state has to find, I think, a way to make that more uniform across the state, to make it easier for you to get up and expand that, whether it's Salem or Hudson County. You may be on mute, Joe.
Yes, I was. I didn't want to say, thank you, George. Yeah, appreciate, and I think, I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce the next.
No, I have
Dave Mayer. Dave Mayer,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks,
Mr. Mayer.
Joe. Thank you. Good morning, George. I know that Dave Mayer with New Jersey American Water. I know there are many, many challenges that the state is facing, and I want to thank you and the governor and your team for the great job that you're doing. One of those challenges, as you know, is lead service line replacement and lead in drinking water. And as you know, Newark has done a really good job in aggressively replacing their lead service lines with the help of the state and the county. And from a private water purveyor, we don't have the authority to replace our lead service lines. Actually, they're not ours. We don't own them. They're owned by the individual homeowner. But those individuals won't really be able to go $4,000 or $5,000. Not many of us have that ability to do that. And so there is legislation that's pending that would allow us and the other private water purveyors to have access to these lead service lines and to get recovery for that. Do you see that as a continued priority in the coming year?
No doubt about it, Dave, and good to see you again. And you get a 10 out of 10 for your Zoom room rater there. Yeah, no doubt about it. You and I have had this conversation before. It has to remain a priority, not only for the sort of health and well-being of our constituency, but it's a problem that if we don't get our head around and handle in the coming years, it just extrapolates in the latter years. I do feel strongly, and I think Senator Singleton's bill might be the one you're talking about, that Senator Singleton's bill is one option. There's obviously the direct state investment that we've been talking about for some years that probably requires bonding. But I think that the level of need as it relates to our aging water infrastructure is something no state can do alone. It's not a uniquely New Jersey problem. And it's one of the things we've been talking to the Biden administration on. Like, you want a jobs program, like roads, bridges, highways, that's all great. And like, we're going to get Portal and Gateway done. That's all great. A robust water infrastructure federal plan that would create investment in the states. It would resolve a health issue, and it would put a lot of people to work. And I just think that the magnitude of that problem is so large across the country, it really requires a federal fix.
Yes, thanks, George. Appreciate that and appreciate your time today. Susan, I think you have the next question.
Thanks, Dave, and good morning, Joan, City Electric. We've been following the progress of the cannabis legislation, and one of the issues we're concerned about and closely watching is what would be the ability for employers to maintain a drug-free workplace. Where's the legislation going to land on enabling employers to enforce the drug-free workplace, including testing employees?
So thanks for that question. And again, just I would be remiss when these sort of monumental pieces of legislation come up in Q&A with these kinds of groups if I don't just acknowledge the incredible work that folks like Senator Scutari and others have done in the legislature. Again, Skip and Kevin, my colleagues and friends, have carried a lot of water on this. This is monumental legislation that I expect to pass the chambers either today or in the coming days. And again, we approach it from the social justice view, and we're very proud that most of the revenues that will come out of this, again, industry, which again will create a significant amount of good paying jobs, will be dedicated to righting the wrongs of the war on drugs. To your specific question, Sue, and I want to be careful with my words because I'm not the expert on this, but my reading of the latest language is it would permit random testing to determine use of the substance during work hours. It would also permit under reasonable suspicion of use during the employee's performance of work duties. And if you're observed intoxicated during work hours or as a part of an investigation in a work-related accident. And I believe the test has to be scientifically reliable and include a physical evaluation of the impairment of the individual. And that's my understanding of the latest legislation, which I think is on the boards today.
Okay, thank you, George. I'm going to turn it over to John Robinson from Carpenters for the next question.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, George. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Hey,
John. You hear me all right?
Hear you good.
We were happy to hear about Governor Murphy's announcement in June that the state's going to develop the New Jersey wind port in Salem County. We want to thank the administration for the commitment to use union labor on the project. What can you tell us of the timeline for the request for qualifications from the EDA for construction management firm and the subsequent RFP invitation? Like, when should we expect workers on the job site?
John, I appreciate the question, and I'm going to go off memory here, so I may be slightly off, but I think I'm good. First and foremost, the most important thing is we expect construction to start April, May of 2021. And so working back from that, as you know, the construction manager RFQ was issued late November. That should put it due in early January. The construction manager RFP would then be issued, shortly thereafter, let's say late January, and the construction manager RFP due then late February. And hopefully the construction manager awarded a month later, usually 30 days later. That's end of March. That puts us into construction in April. That's our very aggressive timeframe.
That's awesome. That's great news. I appreciate that. That's all I had. So I'll turn it over to Mark Giantonio.
John, I'll just add, before Mark, if you'll forgive me for interrupting, I would just add, John, and again, it's really about being aggressive against our competitor states. We see some of the states on the Eastern Seaboard also wooing the same clients we are, Orsted, EEW, et cetera. And if we put New Jersey skin in the game, your brothers and sisters in your labor and others who are ready to go and do the work, we think we'll attract the tenants. Sorry, Mark.
All right. Yep, no problem. Thanks, John, for the handoff. And good morning, George, and happy holidays to all of you. Wishing you a safe and happy New Year as well. I'd like to start off by just thanking you, George, and Governor Murphy and the entire administration for your bold and decisive leadership in these unprecedented and very difficult times. It really is amazing to watch your leadership and the governor's leadership through the, just horrible times. You mentioned dark times. George, I know you realize the casino industry is a vital part of the New Jersey economy. Our industry employs tens of thousands of New Jersey residents, both directly and indirectly, and COVID-19 has shaken our entire industry to its core. And we have struggled immensely over the last 10 months. The most disheartening is the impact that COVID-19 has had on our employees, who have been financially and emotionally impacted by either working less hours or temporarily laid off or permanently laid off, and just dealing with the virus and working at the same time. Can you give me your thoughts on the administration's position on the casino relief bill that is under review in the legislature? The relief package was designed to assist the recovery efforts of the casino industry after being closed for nearly 4 months and sustaining over $100 million in losses in the second quarter alone. And those losses continue as we speak. Now that we're in the heart of the second phase of the virus, it really is urgent that our political leaders take swift action in support of our casino industry. Thanks, George.
Mark, thanks for the question. And, one of the, obviously the public health decimation is the most difficult part of the pandemic. But, in my first year here, we were really high on what we thought where Atlantic City was going and where we thought the casino industry was going, and making Atlantic City more of a destination for New Jerseyans and others. And we thought through some of the investments we were making in better government in the city and the efficiencies of the city government and the work that Matt Doherty was doing with CRETA and Jim Johnson's work in the project office, that really we were starting to really gain some traction on AC. And clearly, as you just mentioned, the impact of the pandemic on the city at large and the gaming industry has been devastating. As it relates to the legislation, I would say we're still reviewing it. There are some challenges with the legislation. Keep in mind, just the state's finances are crushed. So our ability to make significant investments in this fiscal environment without additional federal assistance is severely challenged. We do, however, think we need to really get our heads around, the pilot and sort of the continuance of the state partnership with the city. And we see those as very short-term needs. So that's not a no on the legislation. I think we're still working through it. But two other areas of work that we need to do as it relates to Atlantic City is what's happening with the city and the state partnership, and the pilot program that I think needs to be addressed in the next 6 months.
Well, thank you, George, and thanks for mentioning the pilot as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Tony.
George, good morning. It's good seeing you versus texting, emailing, and calling over the last
Tony, I cannot believe they allowed you on this Zoom.
Well, I tricked them. I told them I was with another company and it's fantastic. Come aboard. Well, first of all, yeah, thanks. I mean, it's been, as you will know, tough for the last, months, but it seems like years. But thanks to you and the Gov for helping us, our company through this challenging times and the digital divide. I know it's been a huge issue for you guys and for us, and it was some trying times for us. And you guys listened, and and we came to a compromise. Some folks in the industry didn't like it, but it is, thanks for listening to us going through there. You mentioned a couple of things. My question's on the economy. You mentioned a couple of things. Look, we want the economy to get up and going also. It spurs new customers, it spurs the economy. You mentioned studio development. As you well know, we own a small production company called NBC and Universal Studios. We shut down 2 movies here before COVID hit. We shut down 2 pilot TV shows, as you well know, in the Meadowlands as we get moving. So it's vital for us, for this economy to get going, for our 6,000 employees here in the state of New Jersey. What is, with the new year comes a new administration, what's your wish list from Washington, or let me put us on the spot? What are some things that, from our companies that we can be doing to help you guys? Because we're all in this together as we see it. Because if you guys fail at building this economy, we also fail also. So we want to be an equal partner. But what do you see economically in either your state of the state next year or a wish list from Washington? What do you see as a top priority for you?
Yeah, Tony. Tony and I go way back, and it's good to see you, good friend, on the Zoom. And thank you for the question. I would start where I started on the utility question with Andrew. And you're right. And this has been a year of constantly imperfect decisions. As I constantly tell the governor, I mean, every recommendation I make to the governor as a decision point is an imperfect recommendation. Especially in the first 4 or 5 months of the pandemic, we were faced with more unknowns in the algorithm than knowns. And so it's been a challenging year for all of us. You guys are in the thick of it as we are. And I'm clearly very proud of how the governor has handled the pandemic. But to your point, Tony, we will be judged on how we come out of the pandemic. And a big part of that is, as I've said, not only the public health piece of it, the mental well-being of our brothers and sisters and our children, and the economic well-being of our brothers and sisters. So to that, we've had a lot of many, that's not an English language. We've had many conversations with the Biden team as they come in. And frankly, as many folks on this know, the governor has a very good working relationship with the current administration. And our wish list is pretty, as I've laid out, Tony. Apologize. I'm take one step back and just say, while we've disagreed. No, I don't. I apologize. While I just take one step back and just, as I said to utilities, the telecoms, even when we've disagreed, you guys have really stood up and are making sure people can remain connected to their TV so they can get the news, or they can remain online so their child can continue to learn. So deep appreciation, and even as you said, disagreement. They are all imperfect scenarios, and we try to land the plane where we can. As it relates to DC, as I mentioned to Dave, water infrastructure, as I mentioned in my remarks, it was infrastructure week every week in the Trump administration, except that no money ever came out. We really want it to be infrastructure week every week, and New Jersey stands really situated to benefit. Again, Portal Bridge, the rest of the Gateway project, including the tunnels. That is the economic vitality of the next 20 years, is to increase capacity and resiliency across the Northeast corridor. But it's also tens of thousands of really good paying jobs to our brothers and sisters in organized labor. And those are jobs we need yesterday. The furtherance of the offshore wind program through BOEM, lead I mentioned. And what we need from you is really what all of us have said throughout this. And I know you guys are giving us great kudos. I appreciate that. But I think the reason why New Jersey has been at the forefront of tackling this the right way is because of the partnership, even in disagreement, that we've had with the legislature, that we've had with businesses on here, and with the administration. And that partnership, but a willingness to understand, like, we are in a world in which none of us know what came at us and what's coming at us. All I can ask you for, Tony, is the continued open dialogue, even when we screw up, which we do. let us know and let us know how to do it better. And you guys, I mean, I come out of this world, so I know a little bit about it. I studied it in graduate school and I've lived it, but you guys are in the business world. You guys will be much better able to tell me the impact of this incentives plan, the impact of some other piece of legislation, what's happening on the ground in June than I ever will. And so that's the dialogue that I truly value. And one of the reasons I'm here is to beg you to continue the open lines of communication directly with me and Joe Kelly and others who you know well. But that's the way we get through this. And this is a 5-6 year digging out of a massive hole for us. It's not going to happen overnight.
Well, thanks for your comments. I think you're right. I think from the incentive program that you just discussed, George, the piece for us is studio development is critical. It's critical to lure new jobs here. As you know, when we film here, either TV or the movies, it's critical for us. It's New Jersey jobs. A lot of those come out of, as you know, come out of Newark, they come out of the Meadowlands. So it's critical for us. So thank you for putting that part of that package, because that's critical not only for us, but to lure other companies here to incentivize them to film and do business here. And again, like I said, to start off, thanks for the dialogue. Like, we did agree to disagree sometimes, but the dialogue has been there. So we thank you for that.
Yeah, Tony, and I would just say, I have heard of that little indie film studio that you guys own, NBC. But as you know, like, we've heard interest from major entities like NBC, like Netflix, for Atlantic City. We've heard it for Fort Monmouth, and we've heard it for Newark. And that's one of the reasons we have this additional sort of icing on the cake in the incentives regime. But we really stand to be the next Georgia in terms of film production, and we want to be there.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you all to the panelists who joined us this morning for your questions. Thank you, George, for the back and forth. We're going to start with questions from our audience. As promised, we have about 10-15 minutes. If anyone has a question, please use the Q&A function for Zoom. And I'll start, George, we had a couple of questions that were submitted prior to this morning. I'm going to start, I know we touched a little bit about Atlantic City, but one of the questions was a little bit more on point. Thoughts on extending the current takeover or allowing the city to have a little more autonomy?
I don't have a crisp answer on that. And really just, again, the LG has been tip of the spear for the administration on our Atlantic City efforts. I think it's very clear that the city of Atlantic City has benefited tremendously from its partnership with the state right now. I would expect that partnership may need to continue for a period of time. And I think that's benefited both the city and industry, who's looking for the state's leadership in that effort. And again, Atlantic City is one of those things we want to leave wholly different and in a different place than we inherited it. So not a committed answer on whether we continue the quote unquote takeover or not. But I think the elected officials and the business community would agree that the state's partnership with AC over the last number of years has had benefit. And I think we'll expect to continue that.
Thanks. Thank you. Next is, we have a lot of members who obviously are in the construction business, many of whom focus on school construction. And this question came in, given that special school board elections were canceled in December and January, towns that have to reschedule these elections to March 9, the concern is it may be too late in the schedule for summer work to be funded, for bonds to be sold, projects designed, publicly bid, contract, materials procured. What could be done to expedite the process to use those summer months for school construction, like roof replacements and renovations necessary to prepare our schools for the fall of 2021 in-person classroom? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one that I have not given a lot of thought to. And obviously the extension of a lot of these deadlines has had consequences intended and otherwise. I would be happy, Jane, to connect with that person, have them speak to the right people in the administration, and see what we can do. As a general matter, as I've said a few times, anything we can do to spur more job creation as quickly as possible, like, we'd like to try to get there. I don't know the practical ability to do that in this case, but would welcome being connected with that individual for a further conversation with the right folks in the team.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I'll pick you up on that. We had a question on the state bank that Governor Murphy discussed in 2017. Any more thoughts on reviving that as an option?
Yeah, you know, there's a team that the governor announced probably about 16 months ago that's been diligently working, you know, with experts from across a spectrum of industry and experience, working on the public bank model for New Jersey. As with many things that were priorities for us that got put on, not a back burner, but just took a little bit of a delay due to the pandemic. You know, that working group is still sort of trudging through how this should look. We expect coming out of the pandemic, it'll be something we can refocus on.
Perfect, thank you. Next is we're going to switch to renewable energy. What is the governor's current outlook for investing in solar energy here in New Jersey?
Yeah, I think solar energy is a big part of our continued efforts towards you know, our 2050 goal. But again, I coming from the, you know, your side of the ledger, as I like to say when talking to business groups, like it's one of our fastest growing job creators. I think we've outpaced. I haven't seen this report probably in 6 to 8 months, so this could be a slightly outdated. But the report I saw pre-pandemic was that New Jersey was leading the pack in year-over-year change in what I would call green energy job creation. So, you know, our continued investment through President Fioraliso's leadership in new solar, you know, is a big part of, as I said in the utility conversation, both a part of our clean energy picture. But again, we're cold-blooded about this. This is job creation.
Terrific. I think I did see a headline recently about some of those solar jobs and during COVID we've lost many of them. So, you know, our hope is when we're on the other side of vaccinations that those jobs will be quick to come back. Next is, here's a question for CARES Act unallocated funds. There's some estimates that there'll be those funds left over. What is the governor's position on allocating any of those unspent CARE Act money to the UI account?
We don't. I'm not sure that you could do that as a practical matter, given the Treasury restrictions. But we don't have any unspent funds from the 2.4 in CARES Act that we got. As I mentioned, quite a bit of that was put to business, rental assistance, landlord assistance, and a lot of it, you know, went to our own needs, whether it be salaries, overtime. Right now, the FEMA match is 75-25. So, you know, all of the hospital capacity that we built out, all the state police overtime, you know, the mortuary trucks, all of that, you know, our taxpayer dollars are responsible for 25% of that. We're able to use the CARES funding, which is still our taxpayer dollars, but we're able to use it and pay those bills that way. And then, of course, there was the money that we put into, you know, childcare, et cetera. But the crisp answer to your question, Jane, is the 2.4 billion will be spent down by the end of the year. So there really isn't anything to push elsewhere. So that's the crisp answer to that question.
Okay. Yeah, as you know, come July, businesses are going to see, you know, an increase in that UI, you know, to repay the fund. So we as a business community are expected to see that hit. Next is we have in New Jersey sustained some serious damage from COVID, as well as derived some basic living changes. I hope the governor is a staunch about safety, yet not going to the extent that we sacrifice small business as collateral, which I think, you know, to refer to your remarks earlier. This concern is basic small food establishments will die on the vine with no method of paying rents or mortgages while holding on to the lifeline of investment and struggling. Do you want to comment on the state of reality from some of these small food establishments?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question from George, who I know from my prior life. No doubt Jane, as I mentioned, that small businesses have been devastated, whether they are gyms, small retail establishments, mom and pop restaurants. There's no doubt that the economic impact has been tremendous. My own family owns 3 small businesses. 2 of them are now closed and will not reopen as a result of the impact on retail locations that the pandemic has wrought. What I would say in response to George is, without question, we take safety very seriously. We also take the health of our businesses very seriously, and we're trying to strike that imperfect, as I said to Tony, that imperfect balance. There are no easy decisions here. The good news is, again, unlike many states who have shut all these places back down, we have not, and we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into helping them sustain. The incentives regime has a direct assistance. Sorry, the incentives bill has direct small business assistance, more direct cash there. And we're hopeful that whatever federal money comes out Friday, and we're also hopeful that whatever President Biden's first 100-day plan looks like, there's going to be more direct cash assistance to our small businesses. But I totally agree that the devastation on our small businesses, and frankly, our medium and large size businesses, has been serious. We are doing everything we can to not only maintain a little bit of revenue coming into them, but to also help them, pay the day-to-day bills.
Terrific, thanks. We've got a few minutes left, so I'll try to get to as many of these as possible. Hospitals have been working for some time to support legislation which facilitates contributions to municipalities, and there's legislation slated for a vote today. Any comment on the governor's position on the legislation?
The governor never comments on pending legislation in the legislature, but I would say we're working very closely with the Speaker of the General Assembly on that bill.
Manufacturing, the industry has taken a hit and it's fallen behind. Any focus on helping those manufacturers keep the doors open and keeping employees working?
Yeah, please recall that in the September budget, again, in partnership with the Speaker and the Senate President, we put another $1.5 million into the NJMEP program. There's juice in the incentives bill for manufacturing programs as well. Again, we're going to be judged, as I said to Tony and said a number of times in this call, we're going to be judged by the economic revival of New Jersey all of next year, but definitely in November. It's not lost on any of us. This is a re-election year for the governor. And, the continuance of manufacturing and not only continuance, the growth of manufacturing is going to be, is, as our history shows, is something we've been focused on and will continue to be.
Last 2 questions. With the realization of the great impact on mental health and substance use as a result of the COVID pandemic, what, if anything, will the administration do to address these tremendous needs when we're on the other side of this in 2021?
Yeah, I think again, it's similar answer to the prior one, Jane. Our prior investments, again, working in collaboration with our partners in the Senate and the Assembly, we have put significant resources towards mental health, over the last 3 years. Clearly, the need has changed, and we're very fortunate to have Carol Johnson as the commissioner of DHS. And, hard to answer that questions in the absence of understanding the finances and the absence of understanding what the feds will do. But I would expect that this is going to be a front burner issue for the governor come State of the State speech, and a front burner issue for the governor and the legislature come the budget speech.
Terrific. Yeah, it impacts, as you can imagine, impacts our employees, our workplace. So top on our minds as well. And then the last question comes from Marlene Aselta, who's the president of the Southern New Jersey Development Council. Any thoughts on the Glassboro-Camden rail line? Is this a priority for the governor? Are there possible funding sources for it?
So it's a priority for Steve Sweeney, as folks may know. And we've had many conversations with the Senate President about it. And as a part of the infrastructure plan that I announced, there is money that is committed in part to the light rail.
Terrific. George, we really appreciate your time. I know we had a hard out at 10:30. We thank you again for joining us, for being so responsive to us as an organization, your team as well. I know we're on the phone a lot with Joe Kelly and Danny Davidow. They were really helpful to us, especially at the beginning of this whole pandemic, with the shutdowns, when we needed to get, you know, some guy in the Department of Transportation to, you know, stamp something or to put together, put something through Department of Health to get a certificate of occupancy. We really appreciate the partnership that we've had with your operation, your offices. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to ask Frank Jones, who's our chairman of the Board of Trustees, to say a few closing remarks.
Good morning, George. It's always good seeing you.
Hey, Frank.
Good to see you. I want to thank all of you who have joined the call here today. We have done what we believe to be a stellar job over the last year to continue to be the economic engine and advocate for the South Jersey economy. For our members, we continue to inform and educate and engage. It has been a tough year for everybody. I simply want to end the event here this morning again with thanking all of our panelists, and also to really wish everyone here happy holidays, and most importantly, maybe a happy new year, but above all things, a healthy new year. Thank you for joining the call today, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.